Aloha again, everyone. I had no idea I was going to be back so quickly with a commentary, but today I just had to get on this thing about something that just constantly bugs me, especially during these political seasons. Now, as most of you know, those who follow me or who have any indication of what I'm about and many of my viewpoints on matters, you know that as heavily as I speak on political issues, I am apolitical. I don't vote. I don't engage in things like people always telling me, well, you ought to run for politics. No, that's not my style. It's never been my style. So I really don't have a horse to run in this race, but I do pay attention. And that kind of puts me in a unique situation because as someone who is apolitical, you tend to view things a lot more objectively and you tend not to allow emotions sway you one way or the other. You tend to see things that others who have a clear bias and a clear agenda typically don't see or will not allow themselves to see. So I'm able to bum rush anybody who comes up with a clear agenda, regardless of their political affiliation. And so this morning is just another clear example of one of my major pet peeves as far as these political races go and how they constantly try to manipulate people's emotions in order to get them to vote a certain way or vote a certain party. And as is typical, I generally go after Republicans slash conservatives, not because I have any wonderful giddy feelings about liberals slash Democrats, because they're guilty of their particular brand of BS as well. But conservatives are just so far and above the normal playing field that they just make themselves the absolute easiest target because not only do they show their ass, if you can excuse the expression, but they're so easily refuted. And what did it for me this morning was just more about this whole morality thing that they always like to wrap themselves up around. If they're not wrapping themselves up in the American flag, they're wrapping themselves up around the Bible and Jesus and this whole morality kick. And on all fronts, they're the biggest liars and hypocrites going. So they just wear this stuff as a veneer just to dupe the mindless and the uneducated and the uninitiated into essentially voting against their own best interest, or to just keep them ignorant of the power that they actually do have, which is granted them via things such as the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so what I'm addressing this morning involves this whole situation with Representative Todd Akin, Republican of the state of Missouri, who made the controversial remarks about quote-unquote legitimate rape. And of course, all the Republicans are coming out in full force. Number one, denouncing his poor choice of words, which granted, they were a poor choice of words. But they're still trying to reinforce their stand of being anti-abortion and that you should vote Republicans because Republicans are the party of families and are the party of life and they respect life. Never mind the fact that all their policies are, we love the fetus but we hate the child once it's born. You know, once you're squeezed out of your mommy's uterus, you're on your own, kid. So never mind that people keep overlooking that. But here's the deal. Many of you know, because I've said it on numerous occasions, that I am strongly anti-abortion. And one of the reasons is the fact that my own history is as a result of several of my family members possibly being products of rape. Well, at least I know that that was the case, at least on my father's side of the family. It could have possibly happened on my mother's side of the family as well. I don't know all those details. So the way I always look at it is thusly. If a pregnancy results from a woman being raped, it's not the child's fault. And in my ultimate line of thinking, Just because it's an unwanted child does not necessarily mean that the child should be denied its chance at life and trying to contribute something to this world, because who knows? That child who is a result of such a heinous crime could actually become the person to cure cancer for all we know. If they're not given that chance, we'll never know. So, as rough of a decision that would be, I'm more along the lines of, hey, it's a sad, terrible, tragic thing to happen, but nobody's saying that once a situation like that arises, you're obligated to keep it and rear a child under those circumstances, because there are options and alternatives available in order to preserve life. So, my personal feelings aside, here's the deal, and here's what people who vote Republican keep missing, and this is the little bite of truth that Republican politicians keep hiding away from the people that they expect to vote from them. You have the right to decide whether or not to maintain a pregnancy or terminate a pregnancy, because it is enshrined in the Constitution. There is a clause in the Bill of Rights which says that people are allowed to be secure in their persons, in their papers, and in their effects. Persons, privacy, that includes things that go on with your own body, including your decision to whether or not you want to continue pregnancy. So my personal feelings aside, it is enshrined in the Constitution that says that if you wish to terminate pregnancy, you have that right under the Constitution. Now, being someone who tries to take MRM issues into consideration, I'm very strongly on the side of those who would say that something like that should be discussed between both parents. Even if we're talking about a one-night stand, but if something of that magnitude happens, the other person who contributes to that situation should have some say, because they were half of the factor that was involved in producing that situation. However, what the Republican politicians keep pulling the wool over your eyes with is this very simple and undeniable truth, which they will never let you in on. Here's the little secret. Just like they do with gun control, they will continue to dangle abortion before your stupid, uneducated, unsophisticated little eyes, because you've got blinders on to history and, of course, to understanding the Constitution, to realize just this one little simple fact. The Supreme Court has ruled. And what the Supreme Court ruled in a little event that we knew from the early mid-70s, known as Roe versus Wade, is that despite what anybody's personal feelings are, the procedure of terminating pregnancy is enshrined in the Constitution and thus is a legal procedure, which is open to anyone who freely chooses. That's what it's all about. Remember, choice. Anyone who chooses to undergo the procedure for themselves is free to do so under the Constitution, and it has been reiterated in a Supreme Court decision known as Roe v. Wade. So what does that mean? It means that every time a Republican politician throws abortion in your face, trying to use that as their little chain to jerk your neck around in order to get you to give up your vote for them, they're playing you like the devil's fiddle, because it is a law that is set in stone. No matter how often they scream and holler and complain about how they're going to repeal abortion or how they're going to make abortion more difficult, whatever, a simple fact is, unless there is a constitutional convention which will radically alter the Constitution, which is almost never likely, it's not likely to happen, nothing is going to happen with a person's choice. regarding abortion. No amount of screaming, hollering, appealing to the Lord, Jesus, Bible, morality, family values, and all that other nonsense is going to change the fact that abortion is, one, legal, and two, always going to be available. Which brings us back to that word choice. And it's very simple. It's just like we talk about raising children in front of the idiot box. If you don't like television programming, there's an off switch. Or you can change a channel. If you don't like Domino's Pizza, there's Pizza Hut, there's Papa John's. Hell, there's health food. It's all comes down to choices. If there's something you don't like or you would not do for yourself, I'm a semi-vegetarian. But during my long vacation, which I'll explain at some point later in my little reestablishment here, I chose to eat the very land animals which I eschew, which I've always eschewed. Once my vacation was over, I went back to my vegetarian ways. But I chose to eat meat during my long vacation for specific reasons. And then once that vacation was over, I chose to go back to my vegetarian ways. Same way with abortion. If you don't want an abortion, don't get one. It's that simple. If the choice is made available for somebody else and they're considering it, do all you can to instruct them about the dangers or some of the risks that are involved, or explain your moral issues and why you feel that it's wrong or it's not the right choice. Advocate for your position. But at the end of the day, they are the ones who make the ultimate decision as to whether they do or they don't, and you must respect that decision as a free-willed human being. You Bible thumpers understand that concept, don't you, about free will that our Creator gave to us? How about trying to respect that? In the face of the law, if it says clearly that this isn't an issue this is a condition that's made available to you, you're able to choose which path you want to go down, and they choose a path that's unpopular to you, you don't have to like their choice, but you have to respect their choice. And so those of you knuckle draggers who like to be blindsided by all the Republican rhetoric, don't give in to that mess. Because at the end of the day, they're just playing your emotions. If you're going to vote for these people, vote on some real issues, on something of some real substance, like economic issues or like student loans, or it's like you're paying your unfair share of taxes while the rich elite basically get off scot-free. Vote on something real and tangible, something that you can actually change and affect policy on. But leave stuff like abortion and gun control and all these other things alone, because they're red herrings. Look it up. End of line.